Hey, are you ready to grow your business? You have checked out the number one resource for business leaders, entrepreneurs, startup founders, and managers. And we're going to teach you how to grow and scale your business with real actionable steps. There's no fluff in this podcast. It's just good advice. Check out this episode. If you're a first-time listener, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy this episode, leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is with Patrick Curry, who's the president of Allegiance Title Company of Arkansas. It's a business that's doing some pretty amazing things in the title space here in NWA. And more importantly, they're doing some pretty cool stuff when it comes to innovating their industry. It's a great conversation. I visited Patrick at his office. It is an office space, so there is a little bit of background noise. Just hang in there and enjoy, because this is a pretty amazing conversation. Stay tuned. Here comes your good advice. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. We're starting off our 2022 series. I've mentioned we have some incredible guests on the show this year. I can't wait to share them all with you. And again, if you're a first-time listener to the podcast, don't forget, this is the place where you're going to get that good, tangible, practical advice on how to run your business better, to get more customers, and frankly, just take away the stress that comes with running a business. That's right. You can remove stress even during a time like COVID, where we're all thinking, what the heck's going to happen next? So for today's guest, we're sitting down with Patrick Curry. He's the president of Allegiance Title Company. He's been in the title company for quite a while. He's an incredible business owner. He's also an amazing leader. He has all sorts of amazing stories, and he's going to be sharing them with us today. Patrick, it's great to have you on the show today.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Hey, absolutely. And, you know, it's funny. First of all, I appreciate you coming on the show today because, like I mentioned in the intro, so the podcast has had all sorts of amazing guests on it. But with 2022, I was thinking I really want to get like the A team on the podcast. And I've really admired you. You're somebody who, you know, here in Northwest Arkansas, which for those of you listening, you've ever heard me mention it before, this is where Walmart's headquartered. It's where Tyson's headquartered. It's this really awesome, just this really cool area. Are you from here, by the way?
I'm not from here. I grew up in Colorado, moved here about 15 years ago, but it's an incredible area. And I feel like it's a lot like Colorado in some respects. You know, no one's from here anymore because so many people are moving in.
So I have to ask, so you moved to, so now I feel like it's cool to move to NWA. Yes. You moved here 15 years ago.
It was not cool.
Yeah. So why did you move here?
So it was actually for a job at Waco. And I remember, I was really kind of praying for a change. I was working 80, 90-hour weeks. And there's one morning I was heading home at about 2:00 in the morning. And, this is, back when there was voicemails on your answering machines that you had at home, a landline, and I was just praying for change. The following night, there was a voicemail on my answering machine saying, "Hey, there's this job out in Northwest Arkansas. Would you have any interest?" And normally I would have said no. My wife's from the area, and I've been praying about it, and it was something that when it came up, I said, I'm going to check it out. And so I came out here, and it was an incredible opportunity. I looked at it and just said, I can't say no to this. But I talked to the partner in Denver, said, "Hey, I'm moving to this place called Northwest Arkansas. It's this kind of up and coming place." And he said, "You're moving from Denver where?" And I said, "No, it really is a great place." It has been. It's just been a tremendous place to have a family. And we came here with no kids. I've got 4 now. Yeah, okay. So it's been a fantastic move.
So I'm coming up with kid number 2 here in a couple months. And so 1 already feels like literally insane. And so I'll probably have to call you or something and get...
2 is not too bad. We tried for 3, got 3 and 4. So
okay. Oh, so you have twins?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm a twin. So I always feel like a connection for some reason. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But so you've had to, this area has to have changed tremendously in the last 15 years. Is that, I've heard stories of that. I've heard people mention it's so much different today. Is that accurate, or is that just what sort of old timers like to say about NWA?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to this area as Colorado Springs when I was growing up. We're kind of right on the edge of some different developments. And then I remember as a child, just seeing everything just develop around me. And I've seen that here, and I hear people talk about, I remember when this was just a field. And, I see that. In my 15 years here, I've seen more professional businesses and organizations come in, and so it's been really nice to see that and just see the different organizations that do come in and just the breadth of it all too, and also the growth of the large organizations that we have here. I always brag when I leave this area and talk about largest retailer, largest firm, largest protein producer, and they've grown. In the last 15 years, it's been transformative for them too. It's
right.
Huge.
I think it's definitely surprising to people when I mention, because all sorts of guests who come on the podcast are from literally all over, not just in the USA, but in other countries as well. And I mention, when I mentioned the Walmart connection, they're typically like, oh yeah, Walmart. But I was telling one lady who, she was like, okay, Arkansas, where is that again? And I was like, oh, and I mentioned a couple details, and she was like, I drove through Phoenix the other day, and I was like, okay. And at first I was like, why are you telling me this? And then I realized, I was like, oh, that's Arizona, which was such a strange comment for her to make. And she was like, right. So anyway, I'm all for people hearing more about it, learning more about it. And I'm always impressed when people, we moved here probably, I guess, about 9 years ago now, but it feels like that decade mark, 15 years, as you said. It's always pretty impressive that people chose to come here before it became kind of like the hipster place. But something I wanted to talk to you about today, one of the reasons I had you on the show, and for our listeners, I mentioned how Patrick has so many great just experiences at leading a fairly large title company before moving on to Allegiance today. And Patrick, one of the reasons I wanted you on the show today is I've been seeing you post quite a bit of content on LinkedIn on really innovation in the title industry. And this is pretty interesting to me, and I think it's interesting for our listeners, because a lot of times when we think about innovation, we think about like high tech, in the sense of even tech companies, like using AI, just very app focused things. And I was intrigued because I think it's always empowering for us as business owners to realize that innovation is something accessible. In fact, something we should be focused on, even in a business that isn't a high tech business. So I'd love just to open up the floor to kind of what's going on at Allegiance, what drew you to this business, what are you excited about? It's like a, very open-ended question, but let's just dive into that.
So, got into the business with really no plan, and, 15 years ago, and I remember driving around with the president of the company at the time then, and I remember asking him, what is the title policy? And I don't know why he didn't fire me on the spot, because I clearly had not done my homework as I joined the organization. But as I came on, there was just a lot of need for different process changes. And a lot of times innovation, people think about it as like a technology or a software or something that's brand new that no one's ever thought of before. But most of innovation is process. It's process improvement. It's actually refining process. And so we had a lot of opportunity there to refine process. And at my previous title company that I was at, I do believe we had a lot of really great process in place and very regimented. It just felt very structured. It was really, really good. So I enjoy that side of it. Innovation, though, in this industry, it's very paper intensive. And we do a lot of research. We have the benefit of looking backwards in history to ensure the future, which auto insurers don't. They're always insuring the future. And so ours, the more efficient that we get at collecting all that data and analyzing it, and then we can make better decisions going forward. And so there's a lot of innovation that I see there. And we've gotten into software. And so one of the things that we are involved with is a software company that actually holds the data that all of the real estate documents go into. Now, it's one thing, you can contain the data. You think of like an oil tank, it's a storage tank. And so right now we have a storage tank for all the data. But after you have data and you have the storage, you have to refine it. And so you hear a lot about data analytics and like how do you refine those things. And so if you go back to thinking about it like oil, when you refine oil, it turns into gasoline, jet fuel, kerosene. And so we're trying to look at doing those sorts of things as well. And so we have a couple of technologies that we've looked at and operated with involving OCR and AI to analyze documents. And so within the next few months, we're going to be implementing one of those technologies to build a data set. And so when I say a data set, it's really just a set of data that we can go back and start to insure property on this particular county. And so we're doing that here in Northwest Arkansas. Really small footprint, but you got to start somewhere. And for me, it's a really exciting opportunity to do that.
So help me, as someone who's so green in the title industry, in the sense of like, I bought a house and I knew I needed to, work with a title company. Right. And that's about the limit of, and I remember my real estate agent, my realtor, I came in, I signed a bunch of documents, and then he was frustrated because something was done wrong. I have no idea. I have no concept of this. So even hearing you talk about this, it's fully over my head in the sense of like, okay, so you're talking about refining data, creating this data set, and that being sort of a deliberate piece of the work you do in the future. How are other businesses doing it, or how was it done previously? Like, what's the comparison there?
Yeah, what's funny is that it really hasn't changed that much. Previously, what was done is all real estate documents are recorded down at the county, and title companies get these real estate documents and they post them in books. And if you could imagine going into a library and just seeing book after book, and people standing over these books and going through them looking for documents, actually still happens today.
Wow.
And what we've done since then has been able to put it into a database. And so what we do now is we just try to ensure that when you purchase a home, you actually own it. And when you get a loan, that lender is actually first in priority to secure their property, their loan. And there's a lot of things that have to happen for that to occur. It's a very complex, complicated process to transfer property. You think about when you go to the store and purchase a coffee. There's a transaction happening there. It's all behind the scenes. Visa is taking care of that. There's this transaction component that happens. The title company is the exact same way, but for property. And in the grand scheme of things, when you step back, it's a really efficient process to transfer property. But when you really break it down and look at it, there's so much manual process that goes in. There's actually someone physically looking at each document saying, does the prior owner have the right to sell this property? And then there's additional research on top of that. And this is where, everyone's like, well, yeah, I can see they own that. That's really easy. That should be super simple. Well, then I'd ask you, did the person pay their child support that previously owned the home? Because if they didn't, that could attach to your property and you could be liable in the future if that's not covered, taken care of. That's what title companies do. And so what we also do is we clean up the records, we find mistakes, we take care of issues. And there's just so much that can go wrong in the process that, things happen, people get involved, and those mistakes, we constantly go back, correct, and we're trying to do our best job to make sure the records going forward are really, really clean. And then eventually that all goes right back into the data and, in the form of documents. And you think about a PDF and what all those things look like. We just have one really big library of real estate records in our county.
So does it, and this is like totally my own bias, so I don't know if this is actually accurate or not, but it does, like you sort of joked about, and just to make the analogy a bit ridiculous for the sake of the podcast, again, I envision someone going into like sort of this dusty library-esque type of place, and like, the shelves are stacked with these ledgers that they're, pulling down and checking or what have you. But compared to a world that's becoming incredibly autonomous, from the get-go, it automatically sounds very inefficient, or at least the opportunity for, if a human is checking every step, the opportunity for human error is exponentially increasing with every single checkpoint. Getting back to what I was really going to ask you was, it feels like businesses that are not intrinsically technological, it can be hard to be deliberate to make that shift towards using technology, using software like what you mentioned, being autonomous. Has that been accurate in the title industry, or?
Yeah, I'd say one of the things that we really struggle with in this industry is I've always done it that way. And
sure.
I love when I hear that, because to me, there's so much room for improvement when I hear that. And so we always look for opportunities of, whenever someone's like, we've always done it that way, ask why. Why have we done it that way? And sometimes it makes sense that, we continue to do that. But also with innovation, I always come up with, I wish that this would be easier. I wish that this was much more efficient. And so you start thinking about those I wish moments, and that's where we've seen innovation really come from, because then it starts to, you just start to brainstorm of like all the possibilities that could happen. And to me, I love change. I love innovation. And I just see so much more room for improvement in process. And ultimately, it should bring consumer prices down. It should make things more efficient. Sometimes people look at this like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about coming up with the idea, and then I'll figure out what we'll do with that idea.
Yeah.
For sure. I want to be the one on the cusp of finding the idea.
Yeah. You remind me of a boss I had that, Chuck Hyde. He had a great expression of what would it take? So like you have an idea, okay, what would it take for things to be this way? And I always really admired that, because I think the comment on that's how we always have done it, I think everyone listening immediately resonated with that, because we've all had a boss who said that. We've all been on a team where that's been the sort of the status quo, and maybe even ourselves, feeling a little guilty of realize, hey, I've even maybe said that in the past. But you said something that I think was really interesting, and maybe a little scary. You said, I love change, which a lot of people don't love change. A lot of people, I think especially for frontline employees, or maybe even like middle managers, when people at the top are rolling out immersive, even company-wide changes, it can be really scary. It can be really, petrifying. Even, when you are the person at the top thinking this makes your life so much easier, it's not uncommon to find quite a bit of pushback or resistance, because people are thinking like, what's this going to mean for my day to day? Talk to me a little bit about, managing people through change.
Absolutely. I've learned a lot over the years on that. And, as younger in my career, I would push out change. I would see the idea from start to finish and just say, I see it, I know where we're going, and I would implement the change. And inevitably that would backfire on me, because even though it might be a really good change, I didn't involve various people in the process. And I think that's always really critical. And something that I learned was going out and getting feedback from several different individuals. How will this affect you? I think there's a balance there. You can't go out and seek by committee everyone's feedback, because then you'll start to get some of that feedback of, well, we shouldn't change that here. And so it's taking in that feedback from individuals of how it's going to affect them, and then making the changes and making sure that as you do make a change, that you're accounting for that concern, and then you implement it. And I think one of the other things that we discovered too is that the first 2 weeks of a change, it's always really, really hard. It's new, it's different. You're working through process. There's things that'll come up that you had no idea would come up.
Right.
And as you process through that, it's so easy to go back to what you did before. Everyone knows that.
It's comfortable.
Very comfortable. And if you can get over that initial hump, then afterwards, if you can realize change, it's amazing how I've done this, a month or two later, I'll go back and say, hey, do you want to go back to the way they were doing it? We were doing it before. And I've heard, no way. Absolutely not. And so I love that. And that's the part of the change I do like. And when I say I love change, I'm not thinking about disruptive, not being careful or structured in how you do it. You have to be very structured.
Yeah. Not being reckless, right? Change for the sake of change. Or...
Absolutely. And so, people do crave, they want to have stability. They want to know what they're doing and why. And so you have to be able to explain those things. But I just think you never can be complacent. And that's the part of change that I love, is like, I'm never complacent and never want to be, and always want to know what can we do better.
You've been in the title industry 15 years. There's plenty of story. I mean, I don't think anyone would, openly say, yeah, I'm pretty complacent, but it just the hunger and passion that you very clearly have, it is a bit surprising to me in the sense of it's so almost to the point of a clicheism, where someone's in an industry, for a decade and they're indifferent or they're burnt out on it. And in fact, a lot of people listening to this podcast they're looking for something new, right? And so I think it's intriguing how excited you are about the title industry. How do you stay hungry and passionate in an industry you've been in for over a decade, in a world where people change jobs, like at the drop of a hat?
Yeah, I do think that there is something to be said for staying focused in a particular area and becoming an expert in that area. So that's part of as I've done that over time, you peel back the layers of this industry. And I think this is really any industry that's out there. Everybody talks like their industry is the most complex or the hardest.
Right.
No one realizes how hard my business is. And once you get on the other side of the fence, you realize everyone's got the same problems.
Yeah, exactly.
So this industry is the same way. But as you peel back the layers of the complexity, you just realize there's so much to do, so much that can be done. And that's the part that I really enjoy and like. It is the complexity of it all. Before this, I was in taxes, and I did tax returns for large real estate clients. That was complex, and I liked the complexity of that. I liked peeling back the layers, and so that's the passion for me is seeing the complexity of it, and then just every day just seeing like there's so much more to do, and there's so much more good work to do, and so that's the part that it gets me excited, and just to see that.
It's got to be exciting for your team. For the boss to be, showing up excited. I mean, and this sounds like common sense, right? It's one of the things that's really funny about the podcast is, like, I've had people who've listened and been like, yeah, there's really not anything groundbreaking. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, there really isn't. Like, there's something really like mind blowing about a boss showing up every day and like hungry and excited. But at the same time, it's a bit of a rarity. So, I mean, that's got to be great for your team, right?
Yeah, I've been told I have a little too much energy in the morning and sitting to dial it back a little bit.
Okay.
But, I think my mindset is I'm always trying to stay a day ahead, a week ahead of where the group is or where the team is. And so we're trying to make sure that we're always just thinking a little bit further down the line. And I'm trying to stay ahead of the group, which to do that, it takes a lot of energy. I do believe that part of leadership it's bringing energy to the team and thinking through how is it that we are going to stay motivated towards this task. And in business, for me, we're trying to pursue perfection, and we're trying to pursue that next innovation. We're trying to pursue this thing that's way out in the future. It's the horizon. We'll never ever get there. And it's a matter of, to me, it's always been motivating along the way to see the horizon, keep moving there. But I think, from time to time, we step back, we look backwards to see how far we've come. And so that's some of the energy that we talk about and try and bring to the team here. And so there's a lot of, coming in. I've been told, I've got nicknames, last name's Curry. I've been called Mr. Hurry, because things can't happen fast enough or, in a short enough amount of time. But that's just who I am.
What's it feel like? I mean, you've Allegiance is brand new to our area. I mean, it's got to scratch an entrepreneurial itch in some way, right? I mean, I'm assuming you're getting to flex those entrepreneurial muscles. I'm assuming there's sort of like a blank canvas in the sense of, what do I want to see happen with this business? Tell me more about just sort of like the creative aspect of what you've been able to accomplish or what you're excited about for this business.
Absolutely. The itch, I think there's entrepreneurs do have that itch, and that, true entrepreneurs have this idea of like, hey, I'm going to do this, or I've got this in my mind. And I had that, and I had it for years, really. And really it kind of came to a head this past year of like, hey, I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. And for me, the mantra keeps coming back was I chose to create over being comfortable. And so that was really kind of the focus this past year, was to make that decision of whether I am going to really, choose to create. And so did that. And I guess flexing the entrepreneurial muscle, it's definitely been, it's been fun. It's been rewarding at times. It's been challenging at times. There's been definitely different emotions. I've definitely worked harder than I've previously worked before, but it's been fun to like actually make progress and see things happen, and then know there's not a group of individuals or, I'm just, coming out of a large organization. It's just nice to be in a small boat. And so going from 250 employees to 5 has been a very big change. And it's definitely required me to look at things a different way. Hiring is one of those things where previously we hired 80 people in 1 year. My mindset of hiring then was, hey, we have to onboard people as, we have to get bodies into the system, good people. We need to train them up the right way. Now, as we're hiring people very differently. We're having to hire people that can wear multiple hats. And so our hiring process is much more critical now. Someone I may have hired before doesn't fit here. And it's because we're trying to do something different. As we say, we're remarkable is one of our core values. So to do that, we're having to look at people, do things very differently, and really that's been the biggest challenge, is finding those people that do want a remarkable experience, that can come to the table and wear multiple hats, have grit, have entrepreneurism, and choose to create over being comfortable. And that's a rarity, and that's something that so many people, when it comes down to it, and I fell in that camp for years, was I think I'm going to do it. It's always next year.
Oh yeah,
it's always going to be next year. But then, once you choose to create, it's a pretty freeing place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a gut punch to some of our listeners, because we have people who are probably listening right now who they fall in that camp. And if that's you, it's no disrespect to you, but I mean, I have a friend of mine who that is his story is, hey, I'm going to start this business. And I mean, he's been about to start it for, it has to be 5 or 6 years now. Was there a moment that pushed you, like you mentioned how you had been comfortable for a while and then you're like, okay, I think I want to flex this muscle. I think I want to do this. And we can all resonate with this tipping point. I can think of it from my own journey where I was like, am I really going to do this? And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Talk to me about familial support, support from your wife, friends. I mean, how did this conversation go that gave you the right mindset to be like, yes, I am going to do this, and I'm really excited about doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of different people that granted me wisdom, throughout the process, and I definitely I would recommend that. If it's something that you're choosing to do, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with. There's a lot of great jobs out there where you can make a big difference, and it's comfortable. And I was and had that great support system. And so to do this, for whatever reason, I've just had this itch, and I've had, I couldn't be content without that, a lot of change. And so I reached out. I've got a mentor here in town that's the CEO of an organization, another entrepreneur. And he pushed me in both directions. He said, I don't know if you're ready for it because you're not talking like an entrepreneur. You're not thinking like one. And so to me, that was a real challenge to think about, what is my motivation in this?
Yeah, interesting.
My spouse was, Sarah, extremely supportive and just said, hey, when you're ready. And there was never a doubt, how are we going to do this? No doubt. And so thankful for that support. And then I did hear other voices of what are you doing? Why would you leave?
Yeah.
Such a wonderful job. And it's a great organization I left, and really nothing wrong with the organization. And for me, the day that changed my mind was a vision. And it was a vision of the organization. I said, hey, this is where I've been taking the organization the last 10 years. This is where I want to go. And the response was, we hadn't really ever thought about the vision for your organization, but that's not the direction we want to go. And so when that came about, and it wasn't a real negative conversation. It was just, it's clarity more than anything. So once I had that clarity of said, hey, now I understand the organization I've been at, they have a completely different direction and vision, which isn't wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just different than what I wanted to go.
It's definitely a rarity having that spouse support, as you mentioned. I've been very blessed to have that same support where my wife from day one was like, okay, yeah, let's do it, but it is a rarity because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they are navigating that pressure. Pressure's maybe pressure might have a bit of a negative, I can't think of the word, negative implication to it, but feeling that internal tension. So that's definitely a great blessing. Do you feel like you think like an entrepreneur now? Like going back to what your mentor mentioned to you?
Certainly. And I think I always have thought like an entrepreneur. It's a whole kind of GSD, get stuff done mindset. And I've always had that. But, I had the comfort component to it.
Yeah.
And now it definitely steps up outside of the comfort component and you have to earn it every single day.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely something that it's just been interesting, though, as I have stepped out every single day. There's been something that's been provided, whether it's an order, it's a customer that calls, it's meeting the right person at the right time. It just, when you look back, you just see like, hey, there's always a way. And there's great people out there that have great businesses that go out and start. And so, I believe if you're working hard and you're bringing something remarkable, something different to the market, it's going to succeed. And so having faith in that success and just realizing like, hey, if we do the work, it will happen. And we're seeing that. We see that pay off. And so that's been rewarding. It's been fun to see it on the front end because it starts from zero.
Yeah.
and that momentum at first is a little bit difficult, but as you get a little bit of momentum, and I'm seeing that already just within the first 90 days, and we're at about, day 90, and you start to see that it starts to build, and we're seeing it build right now. But of course, you gotta maintain the momentum.
Well, I mean, you got to love the agility of being a smaller business, right? Where like you get to make a decision and immediately begin building the plans to make that decision carry out, as opposed to, for better or worse, I think we can all resonate with that larger business where, the decisions get made, by committee almost. Even when you are the decision maker, it seems like you need more and more people as you grow to sign off on things or to give their insight on things. And it's why one of the reasons I love being an entrepreneur and I love working with entrepreneurs is because they're just so much quicker. And it can be really frustrating to, especially in a time like COVID, where, businesses have really needed to turn on a hat, and then not having that speed can be really painful. So I imagine you're really enjoying that element.
Yeah, that part of it I am. And that has been really nice to just be able to stick and move, and you're just constantly, you're able to make decisions. And I'd say definitely the big change for me was I came from a larger organization, and you're not making slow decisions on purpose. It's
right.
You're trying to get everyone's input. You're trying to build goodwill with individuals and make sure it's part of the culture, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you're a smaller organization, then you have the agility, and it has been nice, and you can make a good decision or a bad decision, and but the nice thing is when you make a bad decision, you have the ability to correct it very quickly.
Yeah,
and so that's been wonderful.
Yeah. So Patrick, what's the vision for Allegiance? Like, where do you see this going? Where do you see even like maybe your personal journey going?
Yeah. So for this business in general, like I want to change it, and I want to leave an impact. And that's, as we talk as a team here, is we feel like we will have success if we make a change in the industry. And I feel like I've done this all along the way. Previously, I'm sure that all the listeners on here would say, if you step back and really look at ideas and things that you've done in the industry, there's small things that you've delivered that have changed the industry. And so I think that we can do that here. And what we're going to do is I want to make it more efficient, and I want to do that through technology. And that's why we've got the interest in the software company. And I want to start introducing other technologies like OCR, AI, and then I want to keep delivering that until I can finally deliver a product that is much, much more efficient. And even if it's on a really small scale, I'm okay with that. I'm okay if it's in one little county in Arkansas, because if I can make a difference here, to me, that's the biggest thing, is just making a difference, making an impact to where it changes the industry. Now, if that were to expand and it becomes more on a national level, so be it. But I believe you have to make a change somewhere, and so this is where we're choosing to do it.
Well, it's really interesting. You're thinking about you, like in terms of like professionally, you were CEO at a you mentioned 250 employees, a larger title company. And as we talk about legacy and future, you mentioned, if I can just help one county, it's a bit of a upside down funnel, I guess, in the sense of it does feel like people are always thinking like what's now the grander thing. And so I think not so much a question. I'm just intrigued by your humility on, it's not about now, a bigger title or a bigger position, but, if I can just help, what I'm saying, you see kind of like it's not a disconnect. It's just, it's countercultural, I guess.
Yeah. It's a cultural disconnect.
Yeah. Especially in today's social media world, LinkedIn, what have you. And people are always, what's the next thing I can share about? What's the next big thing? And obviously I don't want to come across in a rude way of like, you're doing something smaller now. It is much larger in terms of the amount of work you're putting in, the creativity you're having to bring to the table, but it is countercultural in terms of how you just described it, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's where you can fall into the trap of what you should do and what you're supposed to do. And what I should have done and what I was supposed to do was to continue down the path of growth, bigger, and just continue down that cultural path of a bigger title. Keep growing the company, make it bigger. And really, for me, it was a step back. It was a step back in vision to say, if I'm going to do something different and make a change, this is how I'm going to do it. And, I will say, like, I'm talking about one county right now. That's not my final vision.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely, I want that to expand, but you've got to start somewhere. That's the first step. Is I want to see that. I want to see it happen. I love this area. I love the community, and I want to make a change. And I believe once I make that change, that will continue to grow and grow my team here, grow the impact.
It does feel like people who really discover lightning in a bottle, they become all the more hungry about not just innovation in the industry, but just seeing the problems that are rising up in the industry and being committed and passionate about, I really want to solve that, which I think is important for all of us listening, because a lot of entrepreneurs get into entrepreneurship not because they're solving an industry problem. In many cases, it's about solving a me problem. I'm unhappy with my job. I'm unhappy. I had one person, they were like, yeah, I really want to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, what do you think that means? And he's like, well, I mean, no one tells you what to do and you sleep in as late as you want. And I just was like, okay, wow, you are in for a rude awakening. But it's very selfish focused. And the people who've come on the podcast, who've gone on to grow these really amazing businesses, have this similarity to what you're saying, which is, I was no longer comfortable with the problems that are common in our industry. So I think that bodes well for what you're doing at Allegiance.
Yeah.
So
we're excited. It's definitely, we're the first step in the journey. And again, it's like, it's just it's in its infancy right now, and we're seeing that. But we've had some success, and one of the things that I would say as far as success and on the software side of things is we actually have had a national client come on board and give us seed money to move all of their national data onto our platform. And so for us, that's validation in that, hey, we're going down the right path.
Yeah, wow.
And so I see that, and so that's just one of those things that if we can keep up that momentum, then I think that hopefully I'll be on your podcast maybe 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And you'll come back and play some of these things. Hey, remember how small you were? And I can say I accomplished what we're trying to do, making a difference.
We tend to bring people on sooner than that. So hopefully in the next 5 years. But this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for your time today. For people who are listening who they're thinking two things, they're thinking, man, I really want to find out more about Allegiance. And they're also thinking maybe they want to connect with you. What are the best ways for them to do that?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is probably the best way. So if you look me up on there, it's Patrick Curry on LinkedIn, and you'll see me at Allegiance Title. It's Allegiance Title of Arkansas is the brand that we have on there. And again, we're just getting started, so it's we have a little bit of content out there, and looking to expand that. Those are two of the best ways. And then always email. So that's pcurry@allegiancetitle.com.
Great. Well, Patrick, again, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, for our listeners, I'm going to make sure I put the link to his LinkedIn. It's going to be down in the episode description below, as well as the Allegiance website. Remember, you can email him at pcurry@allegiancetitle.com. If you've been following the podcast, by the way, if this was your first time listening and you enjoyed the podcast, What the heck are you waiting on? Click the subscribe button, click the follow button so we can keep bringing you good advice wherever you are. And don't forget, if you love the podcast, you want to support the podcast, you can buy me a cup of coffee at our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/goodadvice. For as little as $5, you can support the podcast on a monthly basis. We really appreciate it. Hey, we're going to continue to bring you amazing guests in 2022. I cannot tell you how excited I am about some of these guests who are coming on this year. And I wish you well on your entrepreneurial journey and good luck. And we'll continue to bring you good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.